My name is Judge Holden, and today I will debate the nature of war with 20 warriors. My first claim is, war is the highest and most honest expression of human nature. Everything else is pretense built on top of that truth.
You ignore what military history actually shows. The 100 Years' War cost France over 2 million lives and resulted in absolute devastation of the French countryside. The economic loss was so catastrophic that France took 80 years to recover. Compare that to the Marshall Plan after World War II. The United States spent $60 billion rebuilding Europe, and the result was not just economic recovery, but the longest period of peace in European history. Construction is the honest expression. War is failure of everything else.
The Marshall Plan is exactly my point. After World War II cost 80 million lives, America needed to rebuild Europe to create a stable market for its goods. That is domination through different means. The money was not charity. It was control. Europe became economically dependent on American capital. The post-war peace was not peace. It was the dominance of one power so complete that other powers could not resist. You call construction honest because it does not look like war. But economic colonization is simply war without the gunfire.
If the post-war period was colonization, why did it work? Why did European nations remain allied rather than revolt? The Soviet Union tried actual domination in Eastern Europe through military force. Soviet soldiers occupied Eastern Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia. And the moment that military force relaxed, those nations rejected the Soviet system completely. The Marshall Plan created genuine alliance. Military domination creates only resentment waiting for opportunity. The data is unambiguous.
The Soviet occupation failed because Soviet power was weaker than American power, not because domination is false. The NATO alliance exists because America is strong enough to enforce it. The moment American military might weakens, watch how quickly those nations seek new alliances. The Marshall Plan worked because it backed overwhelming military superiority. Remove that military certainty and the economic alliance collapses. War creates the foundation for all other systems. Your construction exists only because war cleared the ground. My next claim is, moral codes exist only where force allows them to exist. Remove the enforcer and watch how quickly codes collapse.
Look at the Stanford prison experiment. Ordinary men were given authority over prisoners. Within days, they became brutal. Within a week, the guards had created a system of torture and humiliation. That experiment proved that power corrupts. But the experiment was shut down after 6 days because the guards' behavior became indefensible. Even the participants recognized the immorality. The code against torture did not come from enforcement. It came from human conscience. The guards violated the code because they had power. But when questioned, they admitted the code was real and what they did was wrong.
The Stanford prison experiment proves my point. The guards created the code through enforcement. The prisoners accepted it through domination. When the experiment ended, the guards were forcibly removed from power. The conscience you describe is simply the fear of consequences. Stop the experiment and the code collapses because it was never real. It was always enforced. Look at the Milgram experiments. Ordinary people delivered what they believed were lethal electric shocks to innocent people simply because an authority figure instructed them to. And 95% continued until the victim stopped screaming. That is the real human code. Obedience to whoever holds power.
The Milgram subjects believed the victim could not actually be harmed. That belief changed everything. When the experiment was fully transparent about the pain being real, compliance dropped to below 30%. But humans have baseline ethical constraints, but they can be overcome by authority and false information. That is different from saying codes do not exist. It means codes can be overridden. But the existence of override does not erase the code. The fact that you can violate a moral code proves the code exists. If codes were only enforcement, violation would be impossible. Violation requires knowing what the code is and choosing to break it.
You are describing cognitive dissonance, not moral code. When people harm others, they must rationalize it. That rationalization feels like conscience. But it is simply the mind protecting itself from what it has done. In Rwanda, neighbors who had lived together for generations murdered each other. The killings happened over 100 days. Estimates place the death toll at 800,000 people. These were people with shared codes, shared religion, shared community. And yet all of that collapsed in weeks. Why? Because tribal loyalty overrode the codes. The ethnic Hutu killed ethnic Tutsi because the code changed from your neighbor to your enemy. Codes are not real. They are temporary frameworks that shift when power dynamics shift. My next claim is, those who refuse to dominate will be erased by those who do.
Howe Stark ruled the North through honor for thousands of years. They kept their word. They protected the weak. They did not dominate through fear. When the Boltons tried to rule through cruelty, the people rebelled. They chose to follow me instead, even though the Boltons had more soldiers. Why? Because people believe in honor more than they fear power. The people would rather die for something true than live under lies. When I died at Castle Black, my men avenged me. Not because they feared me, but because they believed in what I stood for. Does that not prove domination is not the only path?
The Boltons ruled through fear but lost because you had equal military strength. The people rebelled only because you gave them an alternative they could win with. But look at what happened when Aegon Targaryen invaded with dragons. Entire kingdoms submitted without fighting. No code of honor mattered. That is the real law. When power is absolute, codes disappear. You kept your word because you had the strength to afford honor. The Boltons abandoned honor because they believed fear was enough. When power balance shifts, codes shift with it.
Aegon ruled for 400 years. But the Targaryen dynasty did not last through strength alone. When the Mad King broke the codes, the kingdom rebelled. Even loyal houses turned against him. The people could have lived under fear forever. But when the code was broken, they rejected the entire system. That proves codes matter. They create loyalty that power alone cannot create.
The Targaryen dynasty fell because their power declined. The dragons died. The gold ran out. The lords rebelled when it was safe to rebel. Not because codes mattered, but because power had weakened. Robert only rebelled when the king had already lost control. The code returns when power is secure again. The Night King ruled through absolute power. No code could stop him. Only greater power than his own. My next claim is, knowledge is a weapon meant to be owned, not shared. Those who hoard it control those who do not have it.
The gods kept their knowledge hidden from mortals. That is how they maintained power. But when I learned how to kill gods, everything changed. I defeated them by understanding their weaknesses. Then I shared that knowledge with humanity. Now humans are no longer slaves to divine power. Knowledge shared freed people from domination. When I taught my son how to fight gods, I did not do it to control him. I did it to free him. Does shared knowledge not create equals instead of masters?
You taught your son from the position of being the first to know. You remain the original, the first god killer. That cannot be shared. You will always be the source of the knowledge. You control the story of how that knowledge came to exist. The moment you share knowledge, you control how it is understood. When you told the story of killing gods, you shaped how humanity understood godhood. That is control. You did not free humanity.
But my son does not follow my philosophy. He rejects killing gods. He chooses a different path. If I truly controlled him through shared knowledge, he would follow my way. But he does not. That proves shared knowledge creates freedom. Each person who learns can choose differently than the teacher. Does that not weaken your argument that knowledge means control?
Your son rejects your philosophy because he has enough power to do so. He learned from you while you were alive. He was protected by your knowledge. Now that he is strong enough, he can choose differently. But that choice only exists because you gave him the knowledge first. Those who do not know how to kill gods remain slaves to gods. Your knowledge freed him. But it also means you control the foundation of his freedom. That is ownership, just dressed in the language of liberation. My next claim is, war is eternal because humanity secretly needs it. Remove all enemies and watch what humans create for themselves.
When war ends, people create. They build homes instead of destroying them. They raise children without fear. They plant gardens instead of burning fields. That creation is what humans actually want. I have traveled through time. I have seen what happens when a coup is defeated in some timelines. Civilizations flourish. Art emerges, science advances, music returns. Humans do not need war, they need purpose. And purpose can come from building or from surviving. But building is stronger, building lasts. War destroys what people built. That destruction proves war is not human need. War is interruption of human nature.
The civilizations you saw flourish, how long did they actually flourish? When you saw the timelines where a coup was defeated, did you notice that new conflicts always emerged? Different enemies, different wars. Or did those civilizations maintain perfect peace forever? Tell me what you observed. Did the peaceful civilizations create new conflicts simply because they could not function without them?
Some conflicts emerged from old tensions, from people who wanted power. But those conflicts were not inevitable. They were choices. Leaders chose to create wars because they wanted control. Most people did not want those wars. Most people wanted to continue building. The difference is important. War is not a human need. War is what some humans impose on others when they want power.
Those leaders who created conflict were simply being honest about what humans are. Every peaceful society exists only because someone powerful maintains it. The moment that maintenance stops, people compete for dominance. You see that competition as failure. I see it as truth emerging. The peaceful civilizations you observed were peaceful only because the cost of conflict was too high, not because humans transcended the need for conflict. The moment the cost lowered, conflict returned. That is the real nature of things, not what you choose to see, but what actually happens.